Have you ever noticed the way your baby looks at you? Not just a quick glance, but that deep, silent stare. The kind where they don't look away, where their eyes lock onto yours as if they're trying to understand something, or maybe even recognize you. Most people think it's random, just a baby being curious, but it's not. Because in those moments, something very specific is happening inside your baby's brain. Something that plays a critical role in how they learn to understand people, emotions, and even themselves. And here's the part that surprises most parents. Your baby is not just looking at you. They're studying you. They're analyzing patterns in your face, your expressions, your tone, your reactions, all in real time. Because your face is one of the most important sources of information their brain will ever have. And what they learn from it starts shaping them immediately. But to understand why that stare matters so much, we need to go back to the very beginning, to how a baby's brain actually develops in the first months of life. Because what looks like a simple moment is anything but simple. To understand what's really happening in that moment, you have to understand something fundamental about your baby's brain. Because when a baby is born, their brain is not finished, not even close. In fact, at birth, a baby's brain is only partially developed, which means something very important. They don't experience the world the way you do. They don't have language. They don't have logic. They don't have the ability to explain or organize what they feel. So how do they learn? They learn by observing, by absorbing patterns, by watching very, very closely. And one of the most important things they can observe is your face. Because your face is not just a face to them. It's information, it's emotion, it's safety, or uncertainty, all in one. Now here's where it gets fascinating. From a very early age, babies are biologically wired to focus on human faces. Not objects, not toys. Faces. There's something in their brain that prioritizes it above almost everything else. Even newborns, just days old, will track a face moving across their field of vision more consistently than any other shape. Why? Because from an evolutionary perspective, a face means survival. A face means connection. A face means the possibility that their needs will be met. So when your baby looks at you, they're not just looking. They're locking on to the most important signal in their entire environment. And what they do next is where it becomes even more interesting. Because they don't just see your face, they begin to map it. Every expression, every micro movement, every shift in your eyes, your mouth, your tone, all of it gets processed. Now, they don't understand it the way you would. They're not thinking, oh, that's a smile, or that means happiness. But their brain is recording patterns. When your face looks like this, something good happens. When your tone sounds like this, something changes. And over time, those patterns begin to form expectations. This is how your baby starts to understand what emotions feel like. Not by being told, but by seeing them in you. And this is where that stare changes completely. Because it's not passive, it's active. It's your baby trying to make sense of something incredibly complex without language. Now think about how often this happens. You're holding your baby, you look at them, they look back, and for a few seconds, everything else disappears. It's just eye contact, silent, still, focused. And in that moment, Your baby's brain is doing something extraordinary. It's building connections. Literally, neural connections are forming based on what they're seeing in your face. Connections that will later influence how they read emotions, how they respond to people, how they understand social cues, and even how they regulate themselves. Because here's something most people don't realize. Your baby doesn't just learn emotions from you. They borrow them. If your face is calm, their system begins to calm. If your expression is tense, their system picks that up too. This is called emotional attunement, and it's happening long before your baby can say a single word. Now here's where it gets even more powerful, because this process doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require you to always be happy, but it does require something else: presence. Because for your baby, your face is like a mirror. It reflects back to them what the world feels like. And when that mirror is consistent, clear, and responsive, your baby starts to build a sense of understanding, of predictability, of connection. But when that mirror is inconsistent, or absent, or distracted, the experience changes. And that's where those same moments of eye contact can start to feel very different. Now here's where most people get this wrong. Because they assume that as long as they're physically there, everything is fine. You're in the same room. You're holding your baby. You're close, so it must be enough. But from your baby's perspective, presence is not just about being there. It's about being engaged. Because remember, your baby is not just looking at your face. They're looking for a response, a reaction, a signal that what they're doing matters. And when that signal comes, something very important happens. The connection locks in. Your baby looks at you, you look back, you respond, and their brain registers, this works. This means something. But when that response doesn't come, the experience changes. And this is where those same moments that seem small start to carry more weight than you think. Imagine this: your baby looks at you. They hold eye contact. They're waiting, not consciously, but neurologically. They're expecting something to happen: a smile, a sound, a shift in your expression, anything. And instead, nothing happens. Your face stays neutral, or your attention is somewhere else, or there's just a delay. And in that moment, your baby's brain has to process something unexpected. The signal they sent didn't come back. Now again, this isn't about one moment. This is about patterns. Because if that happens occasionally, it's not a problem. But if it happens repeatedly, the brain starts adapting. Instead of expecting interaction, your baby begins to lower that expectation. And over time, those attempts to connect can become less frequent, less intense. Not because the need disappears, but because the response becomes uncertain. Now here's something most people don't notice. Sometimes this happens in very subtle ways. You're with your baby, but your attention shifts. Even briefly, your face changes, your responsiveness drops, and from your perspective, it's nothing, just a moment. But from your baby's perspective, that moment interrupts the connection. And when that interruption happens often enough, it begins to shape how those interactions feel. Now here's the important part. Your baby is not judging you. They're not thinking in words. They're not forming opinions. They're adapting. Their brain is constantly asking, when I do this, what happens next?
And the answer to that question is what builds their understanding of connection. Sometimes that understanding becomes stronger, more responsive, more engaged. But sometimes it becomes quieter, more uncertain. And this is where that stare starts to change. Instead of being curious, it becomes searching. Instead of being playful, it becomes cautious. Because your baby is still trying to figure something out. Is this connection going to happen? And here's the part that most people miss completely. When that connection does come back, even after a missed moment, your baby notices that too. They feel the shift. They register the return. And that return is more powerful than most people think, because it tells their brain something very important. It came back. And that matters more than getting it right every single time. But to really understand why that return is so powerful, we need to look at what happens over time. Because these small moments, they don't stay small. They build. They repeat. They shape something much bigger than just eye contact. They shape how your baby experiences connection itself.
So now when you think about that moment, when your baby looks at you, really looks at you, you can start to see it differently. Not as something random, not as something small, but as one of the first real conversations they will ever have. A conversation without words, where everything is being communicated through attention, through expression, through presence. Because when your baby looks at you like that, they're not just observing. They're asking something. They're reaching out in the only way they can. And the question is simple, but incredibly important. Are you there with me? Not just physically, but emotionally. Because for your baby, that difference matters more than anything else. And here's the part that changes everything. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to respond in the right way every time. You don't have to be constantly engaged without ever missing a moment. That's not real. That's not human. And more importantly, that's not what your baby needs. What your baby needs is something much more simple. Moments of connection that happen often enough to feel consistent. Moments where they look and something comes back. A smile, a soft expression, a small sound. Even something as simple as your eyes meeting theirs and staying there for just a second longer. Because those small moments, they're not small to your baby. They're everything. They're how your baby learns what connection feels like. They're how your baby begins to understand that what they do has meaning. That when they reach out, something responds. And over time, those repeated moments of connection begin to form something deeper. A sense of safety, a sense of predictability, a quiet understanding that the world responds. Now think about how powerful that is. Not something complicated, not something you have to study for, just being present in the moments that are already happening. Because those moments are already there, every day, in the way your baby looks at you, in the way they wait for your reaction, in the way they hold that gaze just a little longer than expected. And now you know why. It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's one of the earliest ways your baby is learning about connection, about people, about you. And here's something most people don't realize. Years from now, your baby won't remember these moments, not consciously. They won't remember the exact look, or the exact expression, or the exact interaction. But their brain will.
Because those experiences don't just disappear. They become part of how they feel connection, part of how they understand people, part of how safe the world feels to them. And that process is happening right now, in moments that seem simple, in moments that seem ordinary, in moments that most people would never think twice about. But now, you will. Because the next time your baby looks at you like that, you won't just see a stare. You'll see a moment where something is being built, quietly, in real time. If this made you see your baby differently, subscribe. Because understanding how your baby experiences the world changes everything.